control the vertigo.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic with your host Mark. Today we are covering an episode of The Night Gallery. And now we are in season 2 and this is episode 10 of season 2. First aired on November the 24th, 1971 in the US and has 2 stories. And an interesting pair of stories. They're kind of a bit different from some of the other stuff we see. They're similar to some other of the Night Galleries, the more unusual and sort of ethereal ones. The first story is called The Dark Boy. Now, this is directed by John Aston, who, himself stars in a few episodes. It's Gomez from the Addams Family. And the story was adapted by Halstead Wells from a story by August Derleth. And I did actually go to the trouble of reading that story. I have got like a Night Gallery companion collection thing that lists, gives the original stories that some of the stories are based on. When it's not Rod Serling, actually. Though I have got some with Rod Serling too. And this is part of that collection. August Derleth, and also often associated with Lovecraft. I think he collected and sort of curated Lovecraft stories and was a short story writer himself. And it's mostly faithful. It follows the same track. There's a few bits. There's you want to show in TV rather than tell, and obviously in a written form you can tell. So we have to sort of show different things. Now this one starred Elizabeth Hartman as a teacher who has come to a small town. It's set like 1870s, 1880s, something like that. That's how it feels. Though the written form is a little later, but you can kind of tell there's things in it that just not in this one. Now, it reminded me a lot, actually, the look and feel of the sets of The Little House on the Prairie, and I just actually wondered if they'd reuse some of the sets, because it looks really, really similar. But maybe not. So The Dark Boy, the teacher is on the way to the school, reads a little note, and you don't actually see what's on it as she approaches, and she's welcomed by 2 sort of elderly sisters who welcome her to the school, sort of make her feel comfortable, talk about it. But there's something going on. They're keeping something from her. She can't quite tell what. She goes to the school. She talks about her day when she's finished. They ask her about it, but they kind of keep giving each other the side eye, like they're waiting for something. And eventually she mentions, I had 17 pupils, and they sort of say, no, you only got 16. She goes, no, I remember distinctly. There were 16 blondes and this dark-haired boy. And they said, no, there's no such boy. And basically it turns out that this dark-haired boy, the Dark Boy, is a ghost. And while the episode proceeds, a farmer brings his son in and actually says to her, the state says he has to have, the government says he has to have schooling. I might need him in the field sometime. And the teacher also recognises this boy that she keeps seeing is kind of similar looking to the farmer. And then she looks through the registers and works it out. And essentially, this boy is haunting, and she thinks it might be lonely. She also, I should mention, she herself is a widow as well. So she's lonely somewhat. And she's working late at night, and she sees the boy peeking in, and she tries to wave him in, but he keeps running off. And that she mentions this to the sisters, and they sort of say, well, you don't really want to work there at night. I'm sure it was nothing. They're trying to pull her off. In the end, they confess, yes, the teacher before, the school mistress before her saw this boy, and no one in the town believed them, and they drove her off pretty much. But now they realise when someone new is seeing the same thing, it must be a ghost. It can't be just the imagination or madness of the teacher before. So it's kind of a lyrical tale, really, and it's kind of sweet. In the end, she talks to the farmer and sort of says, you know, I'm seeing this, and then he confesses he sees it too, and he doesn't want to be run out of town. But together, they kind of help this spirit, lonely, wandering spirit, to have rest. It appears from the story. They essentially, she's in there one evening. She manages to coax him in and starts reading him a story. And while she's reading him a story, the farmer comes in. His father comes in and sort of sees him, and they talk about, come on, let's go home. And they go home with the ghost. And they're talking about various things that not in the written story, like, you know, remember we went down to the woods and I whistled like a whippoorwill. And when they get back to the farmer's house with the boy, the boy just starts wandering off into the woods and kind of fades, suggesting he's now at rest. And there's also a suggestion that the teacher and the farmer will become a couple, will get married, and stop being so lonely. Everyone's lonely. This is a story about loneliness. I quite liked it. It was pretty good, well directed, and I thought well converted. So no real complaints about this one. It was fine. The second story is a bit more ambiguous. It's got some interesting ideas going on. It's almost like some sort of vision of the future is affecting the present to make that future true. It's one of those kind of stories, which I think we've seen in. I'm trying to think where we've seen stuff like this. Certainly, there's a story by Nigel Neal. It's a bit of a stretch. It's Nigel called The Road, where people keep seeing a disaster in the 19th century. Keep foretelling a disaster. They think it's in the past, but in fact, they're seeing a future vision of atomic war. So, and this is sort of similar in that there's something going on that sort of is precipitated by someone having the visions, and it's like a future vision. It starts with a man complaining that his car got sort of stolen by a woman, and he describes her in an artist sketch. The police bring in a woman who looks just like her. They just encounter her, and she kind of is in a lineup, and the man says, no, that's not her. But afterwards, it clearly was her, and she even sees the sketch, and yeah, that is me. And the man's not thought. He said, I foresaw, you're in my dreams. I see us together all the time. And she also mentions she has dreams, and she's married, but I should say, but she's obviously not happily married, and she says she has dreams about a man killing her husband, but all she can see is the man's hands, and he's got a big scar across one of his hands. And then she takes the artist's hands and slowly turns them over, but there's no scar. And he says, you were expecting to see the scar. He goes, no, it's only right. But then they start getting kind of lovey-dovey, and she wants to be with him. But while they're hugging at one point, she gets a sharp blade and runs it across the back of his hand. So now he's got the scar. Yeah, okay, interesting. Weird and interesting. I can't see this playing that well in sort of mainstream TV, even for the Night Gallery audience, actually. But it was an interesting idea. The woman is played by Joanna Pettit, and the man was Alex Cord. Joanna Pettit, I think we've seen her in one of the other. I think the one about the woman who keeps going to a house. I think that's her. It's called The House. Yeah, it is her. She keeps seeing a house in a dream. So again, another one involving dreams. Joanna Paget sort of suits that vibe. She's got sort of a slightly otherworldly quality that kind of works. This, I should have mentioned, this one's called Keep in Touch, We'll Think of Something, which it's not a great title for this story, actually. The story's better than the title suggests, I'd say. But there's not really that much to it. It's a short. The Dark Boy is a much longer story compared to this one, and quite rightly so. This is a much briefer and less. There's less to this story, and I think they delivered it properly. In a shorter time. Any more, it would have felt like padding. So yeah, an interesting episode all round. Not particularly memorable, though I did enjoy it while I watched it. No real weaknesses in it, even. I preferred the Dark Boy a little because I think the development worked really well, and the source material was pretty solid, and it converted it quite well. So a good one. Okay, so that's it for this time. But before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to